the music kind of speaks for itself, and really that's what you want. Whether supergroup, all-star, veterans, whatever, however the term that people like to use or want to use, at the end of the day, you can put it on paper and go, okay, this should be cool, but that doesn't necessarily mean it will be. And the fact is that it's pretty strong. So I'm good with that.
What's up, everybody? It's Keefy, GhostColdBag.com. I am stoked once again to be joined by my friend, John Bush, of many bands. But today we're going to talk about Category 7. How are you doing?
What's up? How are you, brother?
I'm great. I feel like we're friends. You're now becoming like elevated into the pantheon of the artists I've interviewed the most times.
Really?
You're definitely like in the top 5 now, I think.
Well, hopefully it just doesn't become a little bit mundane and boring.
I don't want it to be. I never want to become mundane and boring to you, because what matters is if you're comfortable with me, I appreciate it, and we get the best out of hearing your story. And today we're talking about your new band. I know everybody cringes at the word supergroup, but it wasn't done for hype. The music is killer. We're going to talk about it. Like everything is aces, but Category 7, it feels important, feels big to me as a fan and a journalist.
That's funny. Well, important's cool. That's I like that. Supergroup I don't really like so much, but just a bunch of veteran guys getting together, writing some tunes, and so happens to be pretty cool. That's, to me. I mean, I get the spin. We all have to have the spin and the hype. As long as the hype doesn't supersede the actual quality of what it is.
Hell no. Hell no. This record's so killer. So we talked about a year ago about Armored Saint going on tour with Wasp, and we talked about like how you keep yourself in shape vocally and a lot of other things. And you alluded to other things you had going on that were going to come to light soon. And this was definitely one of them. And you were like, you were hyped on it. Couldn't say too much at the time. Nice job by everybody keeping it under wraps. And listen, this is not your first rodeo. You joined Anthrax, 32 years ago. And, it seems like yesterday now. And we talked last time about Sound of White Noise being 30 years old. Next year is 30 years of Stomp 442. But like, you joined a big group. You were in what I consider to be an important heavy metal band yourself. And this, I think it's the character of the artist, the quality of the artist, and then the quality of this music. When people, they've heard the first few songs, they saw the first couple of videos, when they hear this whole thing, I think it's going to bowl them over like the old Memorex guy in the chair, right?
That's cool.
Yeah, man. It feels good.
Well, that's great. Thank you for the nice words. It kind of happened. I got to look at my thesaurus for a synonym for organic, because that's so kind of overused by me in particular. But it kind of was, Mike Orlando and myself, we didn't even know each other. So we kind of got to know one another through making music, which is pretty cool. So I dig that part of it. It kind of just happened on its own way. And just kind of, to me, that's the best way to do things. It's just kind of happen naturally. So it's not some kind of hyped out project. It's something that really just kind of happens on its own and develops in its own way. And I think that's really the cooler method. So
right on. Plus, you can leave it up. Like when Bittner does an interview, he's always like super flowery and very effusive and verbose. So like, you don't have to do any of that. You can just be yourself, and Bittner will have you covered on the like super expositional movie style origin story. I know that I texted all these people. I'm sure he's going to do that, right? Because he's great. I love that dude for a long time. Also, it's a killer group of guys. Yeah. Or like, I figured you didn't know Mike. I had that inkling that you and Mike were, probably common friends and common, maybe festivals together or something. But like, yeah, like.
I don't even think that. I don't know if I had ever met Mike before. It was cool to just kind of develop this relationship via the digital world and get to know each other by actually writing songs together. I think that was really cool. So he's a super talented guy. We finally got together in Staten Island, and when We kind of finalized a lot of the vocals, and maybe we did some stuff and added some parts. And I hung out there for about a week. He took me to some local beer haunts in Staten Island, and we spent some time in his parents' basement. Well, that sounds kind of weird. Where his studio is, and his studio is just out of control. You know, it's like walking into, you know, Electric Lady or something, and yet you walk out and you're in his parents' living room. It's pretty funny. But great guy, really, really nice guy, just a good human being, and really humble and mellow and extremely talented. So it was cool to do that. You know, kind of develop this rapport from abroad, and then all of a sudden we got together, and it was fun to get to know each other even better. But you know, the music kind of speaks for itself, and really that's what you want. You know, whether supergroup, all star, veterans, whatever, however the term that people like to use or want to use, it's at the end of the day, you can put it on paper and go, okay, this should be cool, but that doesn't necessarily mean it will be. And you know, the fact is that it's good. The music's pretty strong, so I'm good with that.
Right on. It's also a very humble group of guys. Like I've met basically everybody in this band in person, and everybody's very, you know, proud of what they've accomplished. But all like I've talked extensively to Phil, lives where I live in the West Coast there in the Bay Area, and Jack is also, you know, like a super humble, kind person, and would never brag about how talented that dude is. Ever put himself first in a conversation about anything, and he's so good and so multi-talented and faceted as a writer and a player. So it's really a cool I think it's like a great confluence. Everybody brings their thing to the table and it just works, man. Category 7, not to mention the tornado reference, right? The tornado grades, like F7, right? Like
Yeah, that's
I don't know
cool.
why New York is getting destroyed on the album cover when you guys are from all over the place. It kind of feels personal.
Oh,
Personally attacked.
it should feel like an anonymous city.
I mean, it looks like the Brooklyn Bridge and unfortunately Lower Manhattan again, which, you know, we've had enough shit happen to us.
No doubt, no
I'm
doubt.
not there anymore, but I live out here now. But like, you know, it's still home.
Yeah, I guess maybe I should have thought a little bit more about that and made it a little bit more anonymous.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that, that,
you know,
every
so
every disaster and superhero movie. Also, just my other two favorite buildings, and you were briefly a resident in New York at one time.
I
I think,
was.
like you were, and my two favorite structures in New York that always get killed in disaster movies or superhero movies is Grand Central Station and previously mentioned offline, and the Flatiron Building, the Triangle, right, the big shirt
Flatiron
building.
Building is a cool building.
It's so great.
I knew somebody who lived across the street from that building, and she allowed me to utilize her gym all the time. So when I was recording or writing one of the Anthrax records, I believe maybe it was Volume 8, I would go past, I don't know how I would go to her building, which was right across the street. I was down in the Village, me and Scott at that time, but it was great. I would work out there, and every day I would kind of look at that building and go, that's such a killer, just infamous building there in New York. So yeah, we don't want to destroy any
Please,
cool
no.
so.
All these iconic things in my childhood. But yeah, man, what a great record. And I said last, again, I want to repeat my beats with you, but I did say last, from seeing Armored Saint live a few times, and I saw the solo Armored Saint, like you know, the one off or two off headline show here in San Francisco recently, and I thought you were singing like better than ever. I know sometimes the road catches up with you, and you might have like an illness before the tour, you worry about it, but like you sounded amazing. The whole place was going nuts that night. And you know, like I said, I feel like you're, you know, in such a peak form right now vocally, and there's so much great vocal stuff on this record. Like really, you stretching yourself out, trying different things, different key changes, like really cool stuff. The music and the vocals matching perfectly with the writing. I'm so into it.
Wow, thank you. That's very nice accolades. I appreciate that. Yeah, you know, I definitely trying to just keep pushing myself as a singer and as a writer, and just kind of, you know, not rest on the laurels of what I've done and try to advance myself. I'm really music theory wise, I'm not very talented. Everything is pretty kind of just kind of gut instinct stuff, and you know, kind of just do my thing, and it's slightly primitive, but you know, I am trying to always push myself, sometimes to the degree of making it even more difficult live to perform some of that stuff. But you know, whatever. I mean, live is a moment. It's kind of fleeting at the time. Of course, everything is is captured on YouTube, 15 minutes after the gig is done. So you can't really have a bad gig anymore because boom, there it is on YouTube. Well, I can't worry about it. I kind of, without sounding arrogant, I try to equate myself as an athlete, and that's because you really kind of are as a singer and drummers too. And so like you're using your body all the time, and sometimes your body is not on, and sometimes it is. Hopefully more on than not. Had some problems a couple times, and I just kind of I get all down and really really morose about it. But again, I just try to say, okay, you're injured, you'll be back, and that's kind of the way to try to look at it. But yeah, I'm definitely going to push myself. It's hard sometimes singing those early Saint records, particular like Symbol Salvation stuff and Raising Fear, because I was singing so high then. And I'm like, what were you doing? Why? He's like, why are you making this so difficult on yourself? I guess maybe I didn't really think I was like 35, 40 years later, I'd be still doing it. But, I make some adjustments live. It actually sounds better in this kind of mid-range voice. It's a little more of my sweet spot. But, what again, I'm just stoked that I can still do this stuff. Rain of Fire in another 10 years, will that be doable? I don't know. I guess we'll just kind of take it one day at a time. But yeah, I'm real proud of the vocals on the Category 7. I think there's some really powerful stuff and strong lyrics and strong melodies.
Always helping me with the segues. I was going to talk about lyrics next, but thank you for unpacking the vocal stuff. And again, I'm here for it. We're all understanding that, except for a couple of mutants out there like Halford and Dickinson who can really do what they did when they were younger. Like nobody's the same.
And Ronnie, of course.
And yeah, of course. Like nobody's the same human being. Our chemistry is our cells are all different. We're all different, just the same brain and a different body, like who knows what you have left in the tank after 40 years or 30 years.
I'm still stoked that I am doing it here all this long, 40 years later. It's ridiculous. And when I'm on, I'm usually pretty spot on. When I'm off, well, that's another story. I'm always a little raspy, so I always can get away with a little more rasp. But when your voice is blown, it's blown, and that's the way it is. But you know what, man? These days, I don't want perfection per se. I don't want that perfection out of the band. I don't want perfection out of myself. These days, there's so much stuff on tape. Everything is perfect. I'm not perfect. I'm a human being. I'm going to be imperfect. I always used to, well, I still say that Armored Saint's kind of like almost like a glorified garage band. We're tighter, especially after being on the road for 8 weeks. You're certainly tighter than you were. But there's always like this kind of looseness to it. And I kind of dig that because I feel like, again, Zeppelin was one of the greatest bands of all time. And man, there was times they were just downright terrible live. So I'm not saying we should be that. I don't really want full train wrecks because that could be kind of scary and you don't know if you can come out of it. But, again, perfection. Why? We're a hard rock heavy metal band. It should feel live and it should feel like it's not a Broadway musical where it's exactly the same set every night, the same movements, the same choreography. I don't want any of that. So it's a rock show. It should feel unpredictable and perfect and specific for that city. And who knows what's going to happen in San Francisco, contrary to Portland. So I think I don't know. That's what I strive for.
Right on. I was a musical theater kid, and blocking is no joke. Having to hit those marks every night with the blocking and the staging is no joke. And sing. Very tough.
Dude, I wish I had the understudy on some shows, and I did with Jason McMaster. So Jason was the understudy, and I
shout out to him. We covered one of those shows. We had somebody at one of those shows with Jason. Great guy. First of all, amazing, underrated, even if it's possible. And
one of the nicest guys, there is. So
shit happens, and good for him to help honestly bail out a tour, because in this day and age we can't afford to lose dates. And I had a fun thing last fall where I got to see Bad Religion play in a bar for 167 people, and their crew guys were telling me if they missed the show, they were like, we could play in this little bar for like a little bit of money and just have an intimate experience that's weird, as opposed to all the theaters they were doing. They're like, if we take a night off, we lose like 10 grand. I was like, oh my God, that sounds catastrophic to any band. Nobody wants to lose 10 grand right now. So like Bad Religion, who've been around as long as Armored Saint or longer, legends.
And are bigger for sure. So
a little bit.
Yeah. 167, you said?
Yeah. I felt like I was gonna pass out, and I didn't have a ticket. It was sold out, and I bullshitted my way in. So yay for me. Good
All right.
experiences later in life. Getting
With the
those,
gab.
I talked my way into Anthrax and SOD and Armored Saint and like the Ritz in the '80s when I didn't have a ticket when I was underage. Still getting into
Cool.
shows at 50 in Reno with no ticket and having great experiences. So music has given me so much. But
It's
let's
funny.
talk for fun stuff. Let's talk for a second about these lyrics, man. Really cool album. I know you're always careful to not be too spot on the nose, but I appreciate a lot of these songs. Land I Used to Love, Runaway Truck, White Flags and Bayonets in particular, Waver at the Breaking Point. So very, a little bit of personal, a little bit of political, but never too obvious, which is what I've always appreciated about you.
Yeah, well, that's all pretty spot on. Again, for me, it's really about trying to just kind of let people come to their own conclusions about certain things. I think that's a little bit more interesting than to be super definitive and say, this is how you should think about this particular topic. I don't know. It's just my way of kind of working. Maybe, I mean, for who knows, perhaps in some people's mind, it could be a slight cop out. But it's just the way I kind of like to approach writing. I would want people to think. I want myself to think, actually, believe it or not. Sometimes it's weird. Like I've been talking about this to various people, of course, but I really don't know. Like sometimes I have a difference of opinion of something a week later, a month later, 10 years later. You know what I mean? So like I don't understand sometimes why people think this is my philosophy. It will never change, and that's it. Maybe some circumstances you do feel that way, but maybe you do change your mind or change your thought process on stuff. And so sometimes being a little bit ambiguous, it can kind of work. And I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at today about it. And we'll see.
We don't want to connect the dots too well for the listener. Let people think for themselves and put it together themselves.
If they can.
Give human beings a little credit. I know we're in a very dumbed down internet world right now where we're just angry at everything and yelling at our dumb machines in our pockets. But we can aspire to still be thinking, caring, grown-ups. It can happen. It can happen.
Yeah, I mean, I want to believe in humanity. I really do. I want to believe that the future is going to be better. And I have two kids. I get concerned about their future, and I really do. And it can be terrifying. So I don't want to. I want them to be able to feel good about the world that we've handed to them, and say, okay, and I'm going to even improve on that. Not to get too deep and too spiritual. It's like, come on, dude. But that's to some degree, I do believe that. Hey man, let's kick it up a notch. Let's not kick it down a notch. Let's kick it up a notch.
We want to not dumb down our style repeatedly. One really cool story that has been making the rounds about the band is a old friend of yours turned out to be an early advocate and fan. That's James Hetfield was quoted as saying, hearing Category 7 made him smile when he heard the music. That's some crazy shit. James is not one to comment much publicly on any other band except like his heroes and a couple of his peers when they're together. But like it was super. Must have been it felt good to me as a fan to hear that and see that everywhere. How did it make you feel? Because you go way back with you.
Yeah, it was humbling actually. And wow, can you say? I mean, he's James. It's the end of the day. He's the king. And I was extremely grateful for that. And the cool thing about it is that just all seemed very sincere, and that's what you want. You don't want to like in these days when everyone's kind of maneuvering to get people to endorse them through the social media world and all that. To have him say something that just seemed real genuine, that's to me is the best. So it's great. What can you say? I mean, hopefully, I don't know how much he's heard. Hopefully, it seemed like he only heard maybe a couple songs, or I don't know, maybe more. But hopefully, when he hears everything, if he does, he feels the same about the whole record. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty awesome. He's James Hetfield. What can you say?
Exactly. Yeah, and that was on the just for people that have come from me in the comments that you can go hear that on the Metallica official podcast where he was in.
Yeah.
By Stefan Shirazi, who also goes way back in the
Way
day,
back, way back.
way back.
Sure.
You know, that's the dream for any journalist who's like such a good journalist that he ends up working for the band.
Yeah, seems like a good job. I'm sure it pays well.
Yeah, for sure. I'm in Belgium this week with the Metallica tour, and I'm interviewing James. Not too shabby,
Not too
Stefan.
shabby.
Not too shabby. But just as we wrap this up, so I'm gonna give you back your day and your many interviews. It's funny, you name checked a bunch of things, and the first time we ever met was outside of Roseland in New York City when you first joined Anthrax. But the second time was at Electric Lady while Stump 442 was being made. I had been delivering. I had a job. I worked at a deli in the West Village, and I was delivering food to Electric Lady, which was a frequent client of ours, a customer of ours. And I remember the band was like on a break from tracking, and everybody's kind of sitting around waiting for the food to show up. So I showed up with the food, and it was you. You were super nice. Everybody was super nice, and I had met the other guys before. Frank and Charlie are not far from where I'm from in the Bronx, so it's like I had seen them. I'm sure they saw my face like every other sweaty metal shirt kid in New York City in the 80s and 90s. But I always remembered how nice you were in person. You've always been very kind to us, Ghost Cult, and me as a journalist. So I just want to say, super cool to have this continuing, boomerang effect, this Halley's Comet thing where I see you every once in a while and it's always positive. And I just want to say thank you, buddy.
Thank you, dude. Appreciate that. I mean, believe it or not, I can be a dick. I've had my moments, of course. But really overall, I think I'm pretty, nice, kind of humble guy. And I strive to be that. Like people have told me, dude, you got to be more of a rock star, more of a singer. I've heard that since the beginning. And I've never really, of course, I kind of knew what they meant, but I was like, what? Like, I just want to be myself, man. So, I mean, usually I'm a pretty cool guy. And, I when I hear that, I feel good because I never want to lose my own identity in this world. And it can mess with you and your ego and I'm a blue collar guy. I came from East LA, and it's my roots are never too far from me and yeah, the music business it pummels you, so it kind of you can't get too high because it'll just come around and just punch you and bring you back down to size, which is okay because it keeps you in check. So thank you very much.
Anytime. John Bush, Category 7, self-titled debut coming out soon on Metal Blade Records. Always a pleasure, sir. I will see you again soon.
All right, brother. Thank you so much. We'll see you around.
Peace.
Bye. All right, dude.
I found the off button. Here it is.
Okay.